America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and I come to you live every Friday to talk about politics and the quality of politics we need to make our republic whole. And I gave a special interview last week about liberal anti-politics, as insofar as Democrats and liberals, actually more precisely, aren't interested in self-governance. They want the government out of their life insofar as they want to pursue private interests. They want to go back to brunch. Trump is a problem because he has bad manners, not because he actually gets in the way of me substantively designing the quality of meaningful institutions in my life, right? He doesn't use the right salad fork. And for Black people, we actually need justice insofar as we need positive participation in the governing structures of our life, because right now we don't live in America on our own terms. We don't control our own media, so we need media policy that actually makes sure that Black people can tell Black people what it means to be Black, as opposed to white people telling Black people what it means to be Black. And make no mistake, when all of your public school teachers are white women, that's not Black people telling Black people what it means to be Black. We need substantive say in our policy so that we know that, I always talk about my mom being from South Carolina, my dad being from Africa, and then my mom left South Carolina, moved to California with the Great Migration, and then my mom and then I moved from California, and I'm in Athens, Georgia right now because California is very expensive. Negroes are getting priced out of California left and right because it's almost irresponsible to try to live there right now. And Athens, Georgia is cheaper, right? So, and then I don't know what happens. Someone says, what part of South Carolina? Outside of Florence, a little town called Lake City. It's just a bunch of poor Black people. Although my family name is Graham, much like the senator from South Carolina. And the thing about that is Lindsey Graham kind of looks like my uncle, so I'm sure they all have the same granddaddy if you go back far enough. But yeah, my mom's from South Carolina. Anyway, so priced out of South Carolina. Moved out of South Carolina, pretty much chased out with the Great Migration like everybody else. And now I'm priced out of California because it's just too expensive for regular Black people who want to live. Especially if they just want to be Black all the time. And now I'm in Athens, Georgia, but I'm watching Black people who have been born and raised in Athens, Georgia, be priced out of Athens, Georgia, because it's a college town and students want to buy here and parents want to just buy their kids' houses here. So what does that mean? It means that we're kind of provisional America. We live where white people want us to live. That's not self-governing. We don't actually live where we want to live. We can't send roots. We hold our places warm until enough white people decide that they want it back. Right? We hold white land warm until white people decide they want it back. And then they just kind of move us out. You can call it gentrification. You can call it whatever they did in Atlanta to move out all of the Black people for the Atlanta Olympics, but also, the stadiums that are being bought there. Anytime they want land, they just say, all right, Black people, it's time for you to go. Thanks for holding it warm. Here's some pennies. Get. And then they build whatever they want to build there. So there's a way in which we're not self-determining because our rights don't mean anything. We can't press them in the same way. We're supposed to be able to self-govern and decide the policies that govern us, as opposed to have other people tell us what to do and how we do it, and then we just choose to either fight or die. That's not freedom. If you're just choosing to fight or die, you're not actually free. You want to decide the content of your life on your own terms, and somewhat, right? So until we can do that, we're not free. We actually need substance in our politics. But as it stands, we don't get content in our politics. We get the formal participation. And what does that mean? The form of freedom is choice. The content of freedom is control over the options among which you choose. I'm going to say that again. The form of freedom is choice. The content of freedom is control over the production of the options among which you choose. So Black people, we can be given all the choices in the world, but we are given crappy options because we don't have real power. Real power is in the production of the options among which we choose, which are always produced by someone who's not us, even if they put black faces on it. Right? So we are, like, in this election, Black people are going to go overwhelmingly Democrat, because we decided that Biden was the president that white people would choose. Not because we actually chose him. We chose him, but we chose him based on what white people liked. And this is the same reason Obama chose him, right? Obama, don't forget, Biden was chosen by Obama because he was the one who would make white people comfortable. And why does this matter? Why does this matter? This matters because I think a lot of politicians are a little bit confused about their relationship with the people, right? And so let's first look at a graph I have about the Democratic leadership. It's kind of small. I don't know if you're watching. If you're watching this on your phone, this might be hard. But if you have a real computer, you can kind of blow it up. It pretty much says that the leadership of House Democrats is 71 years old. And the leadership of House Republican is 53 years old. That's how old their leadership is. In other words, our Democratic officers die in office. They don't give power to nobody. And they stay there forever until they die. Republicans retire and do whatever else, or move on or move up. But Democrats, like, they have a little fiefdom, and their fiefdom allows them to die in office. We should be pushing these Democrats out. It shouldn't be something glorious that people like John Lewis die in office. The question should be, why didn't you retire earlier and have someone a little bit more aggressive take over your spot? But Democrats it's an aristocratic governance. We don't have power in determining the leadership. And you know this because right now the biggest Democrat in the nation is Nancy Pelosi. And let me give you a little bit of Nancy Pelosi. Now, I'm going to set this clip. I do not like Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi was gifted her seat in 1987 by just pretty much being the richest Democrat in the Bay Area. She comes from, her brother was the mayor, her dad was the mayor, her dad was a congressman out in Baltimore. This is all in Baltimore. Then she moves out to San Francisco, marries a guy who's politically connected. Her brother-in-law's on the county commissioners, and the guy she marries is super wealthy. It's not obvious that Nancy Pelosi's ever actually had a job. I mean, she raised 5 kids, but she raised 5 kids in that rich white lady way, which means I suspect a lot of Black and Latino nannies raised her 5 kids, and then they were sent to like really nice private schools for that whole duration. So Nancy Pelosi was a fundraiser for the gift for the Democratic Party, and then in 1987, enough people died that opened up a seat for her, and since she was the richest Democrat in town, she bought it, and then since that time has never actually sat for a debate with challengers. She's never sat for a debate. I've never even seen her take a hard interview until this week. And this week, she kind of took a hard interview because Trump put forth a $1.8 trillion stimulus package, which would give people a $400 plus up on their unemployment benefits and give a $1,200 check as opposed to a $2,500 check. And some other goodies. They weren't as good as the first CARES Act, but the first CARES Act was already a little bit dicey to begin with. But it was a deal. And people need money because they're out of jobs. And it was a deal. It was a $1.8 trillion deal. And she threw it out outright because, honestly, she doesn't want to give Trump a victory this close to the election. And this is how she talked about it to Wolf Blitzer. I'm going to just let the clip run.
I'm asking you serious questions because so many people are in desperate need right now. Let me ask you this.
Okay.
When was the last time...
Let me respond to you.
Let me ask you, when was the last time, Madam Speaker, when was the last time you spoke with the President about this?
I don't speak to the President. Speak with his representative.
Why not call him and say, Mr. President, let's work out a deal. It's not going to be everything you want, not going to be everything I want, but there are so many Americans right now who are in desperate need. Let's make a deal.
What makes me amused, if it weren't so sad, is how you all think that you know more about the suffering of the American people than those of us who are elected by them to represent them at that table.
And it's not about me. It's about millions of Americans who can't put food on the table, who can't pay the rent,
and
who are
we
having
represent
trouble,
them, and we represent them,
getting
and
by
we represent
these
them,
long food
and
lines
we represent
that we're seeing.
them.
I know
we
you
know
are.
them.
I'm just saying.
We represent them, and we know them.
As we say,
know them. We represent them.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, as they say.
It is nowhere near perfect.
Madam Speaker.
Always the case, but we're not even close to the good.
All right, let's see what happens, because every day is critically, critically important. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for your sensitivity to our constituents' needs.
I am sensitive to them because I see them on the street begging for food, begging for money. Madam Speaker, thank you so much.
Have you fed them? We feed them. We feed them.
We'll continue this conversation down the road for sure. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. I'm asking you serious questions because so many people are in desperate need right now.
So make no mistake, and I can say this on YouTube, fuck Nancy Pelosi. San Francisco has a horrible homelessness problem. It's been shedding black people. San Francisco sheds black people. It's been shedding black people for decades. Pretty much. And yeah. So Nancy Pelosi has not sat for a debate with a challenger in her entire 30-year career in that seat. And she can't be dethroned from that seat because it's a Democratic seat and the machine in San Francisco is corrupt, right? So real politics is going to be about the primary politics. What happens in November doesn't have anything to do with us black people. Whatever, Trump or Biden, it doesn't have anything to do with us. Our fight is in the primary. Because right now we have garbage Democrats like Nancy Pelosi telling us that we don't need an extra $1,200. I will take the $1,200. We can negotiate for another bill after this, but give me the $1,200 now and the extra $400 a month in unemployment benefits. Thank you. like, don't just say no because you don't want to give Trump a victory. They treat congressional politics like it's Versailles, like Sun Court Louis the 14th politics, where it's all about them, right? They feed us. I don't want your food. You work for us. I don't like that. She's like this rich lady who is proud of herself for going down to the soup kitchen and doling out a Thanksgiving meal. That's what she thinks of all of us. That's what she thinks of all of her constituents who don't really have a choice because they control the content of what's on the ballot. People don't really have a choice. And that's why these people get reelected, because there isn't a robust policy that actually allows them to be accountable to the people, to the huge homelessness population in San Francisco. She's not accountable to them at all. They're elected representatives, but they've rigged the system in these safe Democratic districts so that they're not accountable to people. They're not accountable to challengers. So what could we do? In order to change the content of party politics, I would like an automatic debate system. You would have an automatic debate system. Every challenger, if you put your name on the ballot, you could trigger a process that would functionally subpoena Nancy Pelosi to show up to a debate. It could be an independent commission that's triggered just for this. But right now, her competitor, a guy by the name of Shahid Buttar, has been trying to debate her for 6 months. He called her out for a debate, but she won't show up because that's her policy. Her policy is to not debate challengers. So if you can't debate, if you're not accountable to debate challengers to your position, that means you can curate your interviews with the press to people who are friendly. And since the press is only really owned by six organizations, that's not real governance. That's not real democratic governance. What it is that they run for fiefdoms. She has her fiefdom. It's impossible to dislodge her. That's why she's going to have to die before she gets out. She's already 78 years old. 78 years old, doesn't feel like she has to take a debate from a challenger. That's not democratic governance. And she's not the only one. She's not the only one. If you don't have to debate, you're not in a democracy. It's not about voting. How can people vote if they aren't presented with the difference between the candidates through a public vetting process? So it just gives incumbents wins. So if we actually care about democracy, it's a form of voter suppression or voter disadvantage. That it's in the content and not the form. It's in the content and not the form. The content is the candidates among which you choose, which in a rigged system, in both so the Democratic Party in Georgia, where I am, is a bunch of losers, right? We try to pretend that Georgia is a competitive state, but no, it's not. It's not a competitive state. It's a red state. Republicans run the cultural infrastructure. Stacey Abrams tried to sucker punch the Republican Party in 2018, but we're going to find out the truth in November that Georgia's a red state. The cultural infrastructure is done. So the Democratic Party is a losing party, but it's a social club insofar as it's close knit. They run it like not Lucian the football, about telling Charlie Brown, well, this time we're close. No, it's not close. And so it's a social club for people with idle time and idle money because it's not about governing. It can't be about governing. So you get a handful of black people who actually aren't interested in governing. They're interested in, there has to be a name. I was trying to think of it because Kamala Harris fits this too. A name for people who are really aggressive and really progressive right up until they come, but the closer they get to power, to real power, the more they become like hacks. It's not chicken hawk, but it's something akin to it. But those are Georgia Democrats. Those are pretty much the Democratic Party in general. They'll talk tough when they're out of power, but the closer they get to power, and it's not even they get bought by lobbyists. Obama was the same way. It's not even they get bought by lobbyists. It's just that they're not interested in governing. Right? They're interested in putting up a show of governing. And so how do you frustrate this process is the work that we need to be thinking of. How do you frustrate the primary process? By the time it gets to the general, it's already won. Like garbage Democrats have already won insofar as they have won. You beat them in the primary. And that's the politics we need. We need to understand, black people especially, the Republicans aren't your enemy. Hack Democrats are, and they're functionaries, because it only takes a handful of hacks to control. We have plantation politics, so it only takes a handful of hacks to control a plantation. So we need to get them at the root. Get them at the root. Yeah, and so I hope this has been clear that real democratic politics for black people is primary politics. Trump wins, we lose. Biden wins, we lose. My fear with Biden is that he might punch left more effectively than Trump will. And Kamala Harris, she's a cop. I don't know what you think she's going to do. Like, she spent her whole career, she made her bones sleeping with Willie Brown and then putting black people in jail. Like, that's how she got to where she is. And, white suburbanites love her for that. But everybody else, that she has nothing to do with us. So don't bring me Kamala Harris and tell me that's what justice is going to look like. But do remind yourself, first of all, if you're in Georgia, check out Richard Dean Winfield and Tamara Healy. Both of those people. I like Winfield because every time you listen to that guy talk or read something from him, you learn something about what governance means. And so if we're going to lose in Georgia, I want to support the guy who actually is making the quality of an electorate that will make us better at being an electorate. But Tamara Johnson, Georgia. I just want to make sure I get her name right. Tamara Johnson Shealy. Yeah, check her out too. outside of those two people, like it's just a waste. It's just a waste. I'm a Winfield guy. Tamara Johnson Shealy also seems cool. But don't waste your vote on Warnock because he's a hack. He's brought there as a hack. And we don't need more hacks. And lifer hacks like Pelosi are pox on us, especially as they've been watching, a city like San Francisco just shed black people. It's got nothing to do with us. It's got nothing to do with race justice. It's got nothing to do with labor justice. It's just her own little ego and her own little fiefdom and her own little, elite parties. Also, this is why people like, look, people want to talk to me about Amy Coney Barrett, about how awful she is and what the danger of the Supreme Court. Let me tell you a few things about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court doesn't have budgetary power, and it doesn't control guns, which is why Brown versus Board of Education desegregated schools, but schools in Athens, Georgia didn't desegregate until the 70s. And depending on who you talk to, they're still not desegregated because all these other segregation academies opened up. Because the Supreme Court doesn't control guns and it doesn't control money. So they're actually pretty good about they don't go too much farther than public opinion lets them to go. So if you have a problem with the Supreme Court decision, it's because public opinion has their back. So if you really want to govern yourself, you need to get the legislators you need into Congress or your state legislatures. Don't depend on the Supreme Court to secure your justice. And it's a little dicey to pretend that self-government comes down to people who are elected for life. That's not self-appointed, not even elected. People who are appointed for life, that's not self-government. That means you're not serious about self-government. You just like an oligarchy of other people doing your government for you. If you want policies pushed in these United States, it happens through the legislature and sometimes through the executive. If you're looking for the Supreme Court to save you, that means you really don't have a justice issue. And that means all these white feminists, they don't really have justice issues. Because if they really had a justice issue, it wouldn't be up to the Supreme Court. They'd be fighting for it at the legislative levels. And so instead of doing your governance or pretending to do your governance, because it's pretending to do your governance if you're doing it through the court, you need to actually do your government and your legislative, your governance, and you earn your self-governance through working the elected through our cultural institutions. So instead of depending on 9 judges to secure your rights, you need to work on the cultural institutions that form the electorate, the media, the churches, the schools. We need to be writing curriculum. We need to be getting on school boards. We need to be taking over teacher training programs because right now all these teachers are garbage hacks. Like, they're garbage hacks who teach black people that they don't have political problems. They have individual problems and they can hustle their way out of the ghetto. Not the fact that leaving the ghetto is the problem to begin with. You shouldn't have to leave the ghetto to get free. Every teacher should tell you that. You should not have to leave the ghetto to get free. If you have to leave the ghetto to get free, like, you aren't actually purchasing freedom. There's actually a fascinating report I heard about there's a kind of heart disease that only affects, that has worse symptoms in upper middle class black men. And if you have the same heart disease, you actually fare better if you're poor. And it's one of these weird diseases like this. And this is because upper middle class black men live around white people. So it's stressful. So if you have to leave the ghetto to be free, you don't get free outside of the ghetto. You're just surrounded by sharks and tigers. And so we need to understand that free means everyone in the hood has a good, $70,000, $80,000 job if they want one. Right? That's what free means. Free means having money in your pocket, reaching out, going outside and not getting hit up for money. I was talking about this a little bit in my class today. I teach logic and critical thinking, and we're doing a unit on description, so I can actually tell people, the facts about things. And I showed them this. I showed them this picture. And I told this is a little bit different because this is in Jamaica, but it's kind of the same. Insofar as this is a guy who won the lottery in Jamaica, and he came to claim his check in full costume because he didn't want anybody to know who he was, right? And the question is, if you have to claim your riches in full costume because nobody can know you have them in order for you to be free, are you really free? Are you really free to be who you are? Because really free people can win the lottery, sign their check, pose in the paper, and still make it home and not have to change their number, right? Not have to change their cell phone number, not have to move. Wouldn't even want to move. Right? That's what real freedom looks like. Black people, we don't have that. So the constitutive elements of self-government for Black America are going to come through primary fights. It's going to come through the content of party politics, not the form. So not choice among garbage given options. It's going to come, we can put our own people on the ballot. Put people on the ballot, on the final ballot, who actually represent us. It's when we actually get to teach our own history in our public schools. Because justice is going to come when I get to decide what white kids learn. I'll say this again. Make no mistake, justice will come when I get to decide what white kids learn. And not just a few who are in my class, all of them. That's how Black people will be free. And so we need to control public education because right now, if you don't know, in a liberal democracy, you keep authoritarian power and hierarchies through what you leave out of history. Not so much what you tell people, but what you leave out. And the things we leave out to white people about themselves is enough that we could actually, I think, move the needle on some issues if we were serious about taking the fight here. So justice isn't going to come from the Supreme Court. It's going to come from a takeover of white cultural institutions. We're going to take them over. Because, so people say, what about the Black ones? I say, it's good to take over the Black ones, but as long as the money comes from white people, and the police come from white people and the power comes from white people, you can take over a Black cultural institution all you want, but at the end, they know that payday is white. So what you need to do is, if insofar as you take over Black cultural institutions, it's to train them to fight white people, because that's the fight. We need to take over white cultural institutions, and we can because we have the truth on our side. We're going to take them over with the truth. So taking them over with the truth, it's not oppressive. If I control all of white America's public education, they'll just get more truth than they're used to hearing. But it's not going to be propaganda. And we're going to learn the truth about Reconstruction. We're not just going to learn about Tulsa. Tulsa's fine. We're going to learn about Wilmington. And then, not just Rosewood, but Memphis also. All these places where Black people just get a little bit of power and then white people just go wild and start terrorizing them and just start shooting them in the street just because they get nervous. So we're going to actually learn the truth about gender. We're going to talk the truth about white women. See, feminists are a fantastic, fascinating breed. Because they get to be, especially the white women, they get to be oppressed, yet live longer than their oppressors and have a smaller risk profile than their oppressors. It's a fascinating breed of oppression they suffer, where they both live longer than their oppressors and take fewer risks than their oppressors. And when I say take fewer risks, I take a look at this graph right here. This is incarceration rates. And it seems like, to be a white woman in jail, you have to pretty much do cocaine off a police officer's badge while reaching for their gun. We don't arrest white women. And I worked enough retail jobs that I know that they steal. They steal just because they can, but we've insulated them from all risk for reasons I don't know. I mean, it's one possible that the large Black male incarceration rate is completely independent from the small white female incarceration rate, but I don't think that's the case. I'm not sure that's the case. I think we need a perpetual victim in order to make a perpetual criminal. And I think that's closer to the life we're living right now. So yeah, if I take over public education, white people will learn a lot of things about themselves that might actually lead us to justice. So we need to start talking about cultural takeover of institutions. We need not crappy liberal churches. We need real revolutionary theology churches. We need to talk about self-governance as actually creating the content of the governing institutions that then you interact with, through which you live your life and realize yourself. Not just having to cede all of those to white people because this is a white man's country and white people ain't going to do nothing for us, no way. So we're just going to give them government and stay on their terms. That's how we live currently, where black people move out of the South when we're terrorized out of the South with the Great Migration. Then we move back from California or the East when we're gentrified out of the East. And then now we used to be in the cities, but now we're gentrified out of the cities. And when they're entering suburbs where there are no resources, there are no resources or public infrastructure. So we're just dying on the vine out there. We go pretty much where white people tell us we can go, and we hold it warm for them until they want it back. That's not freedom. So we need to start taking, and that's not going to be, and we're not going to win freedom by like some decree of a judge. That's not how freedom's going to work. It's going to work in the street. Not necessarily even in the street. Not going to work necessarily in the ballot box. It's going to work through the media, through the schools, through the church, through the cultural institutions that we're just going to have to take over. We need museums of white terrorism in every Southern town that there is a Confederate memorial. Because trust me, every Southern town, there's a Confederate memorial. There's an old black person who has some stories about the white people they grew up with that are just, stories of terrorism. So we need just museums of terrorism. Everywhere there is we currently have a Confederate memorial. Because that's the order of the day. Thank you for your time. By the way, if you like anything I'm doing, you need to go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and give me a little bit of money. Because, I have bills every month. And depending on who you talk to, talking like this is going to make me downright unemployable. So I need you to go to thefunkyacademic.com or funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. I like the monthlies because that way I can budget. Make sure my kid gets her music lessons on time. I'm about to pick her up from daycare. Daycare gets paid every month. Remember, real self-determination isn't going to come, real political self-determination isn't going to come from the ballot box. It's going to come from the content of the candidates from which we choose. Because the content of freedom is the options among which you choose, not just the choice among given options. Thank you for your time. I'll see you next week at the latest. By the way, my segment, I taped another segment on Rising. It should hit this weekend. Keep an eye out for it. It should be pretty good. Now, I did do a segment on Rising on John Lewis after he kicked the bucket, and it was a little bit too hot for them to air. So who knows if they're going to air this one? I don't know. I don't know. But this is one thing. If I owned Rising, and if I had Risings with Crystal Ball and Saga and Jetty. By the way, I have nothing. I'm a little ticked that she didn't air the segment, but for the most part, Crystal's one of the good ones. She puts me on when she really doesn't have to. And I know she gets a lot of flack from, some of her white feminist friends who think I have to be some sort of misogynist. And it's not that but like, I want equality among risk and labor. And I think feminists talk about equality among labor very well, but they're really bad about equal risk. And you know that because, like I said, they live longer and have a lower risk profile than their oppressors. So I say stuff like that. People say like, oh, he's a misogynist. No, I'm looking for a deeper equality. And I want freedom for black people. That includes black men. And I don't have any illusion that white women will lead the revolution. But Crystal has me on occasion. And for that, I'm thankful. I'm just going to forget the John Lewis segment. I thought it was fire, but I guess it was a little bit too hot. And hope that they do air the segment I taped with them earlier this weekend. So look for that on Rising, and I will see you officially on my channel next week. If you appreciate the work I do every week, and and you think that I should continue to do it because I'm giving you the quality of political knowledge and insight that will help you not squander your life and kind of rescue meaning from it, then go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, or make one enormous donations. I like the monthlies because it allows me to budget more, and that'll help me, with a marketing budget or getting better equipment that works all the time. Because in a lot of ways, freedom means having equipment that works every time you turn it on. And I want to be a free Negro. So if you like what I do, go to funkyacademic.com and contribute. Thanks often comes in the form of cash, and the site takes credit cards. If you appreciate the work I do every week and you think that I should continue to do it because I'm giving you the quality of political knowledge and insight that will help you not squander your life and kind of rescue meaning from it, then go ahead